appearance on Dion's Daily Dose does not imply endorsement from or by any candidate or guest. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by Dion Bergeron or Dion's Daily Dose are his own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any guest. Material and information presented is for general information purposes only. The Dion's Daily Dose name in all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owners, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to today's very special event. We have a cross-pollination, a cross-influence event with Mouthwash and John Schmitz for Indiana, whose political journey much mirrors my own. He ran as kind of an outsider, but that's for another discussion. We also have a very special guest, Jamie Rittenauer, who is running for, yes, Indiana State Governor. Woohoo! I don't know if you guys know, we're going to get a chance to find out more about her. I actually ran into her at a gun show and helped her collect signatures. And by helped, I mean, I wrote my name down and my wife did the same. So we were part of the solution. Thank you very much. But enough of that. Thanks for joining me. This is going to be really cool. I'm just going to pop them on here real quick and we're going to get into it. Welcome, both of you. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
So Jamie, you're running for governor. That's a big deal. Have you ran for anything before?
No, I'm so happy to say that I've not run for any office before. It's 2024, and many of us are here in the nation. We are looking at the politicians that we put into office, and we are saying, please give us someone that's not a politician. And so I'm one of the many leaders that has been called in this time period to stand for the people. My calling is one that I take very serious. I've said it all over the state of Indiana. It's a whisper that came over my heart over 6 years ago. It was just simple in my ear. You're going to be the governor of the state of Indiana. I have been, I have been consistent in saying this to the people because I'm a Christian. I love Jesus. And as I've traveled the state of Indiana, I realize how much the people are looking for consistency. They want honesty. I have had this calling for 6 years. I left it on the shelf because, when you get a calling, something of that magnitude, you want to definitely get the confirmation. After 5 years, ended up going to a Panera. And when I was there a couple weeks in a row, people came up to me and one of them said that the Lord had given me a love for the people and I needed to follow that love. And then the next week, someone came up to me and said, the people don't know how much the Father loves them. He gave his son. And then he said that I had a calling on my life. It was a calling for my future. I needed to let my past go. I needed to walk in that calling, and I needed to allow the Lord to renew my mind that I might approve the pure and acceptable will of God. So I say to people all the time, if that happens to you every day, awesome. Doesn't happen to me every day.
Right.
So I went home and I got into the word and I asked for vision. Eric Doan is often saying, without vision, the people perish. But then what is the vision, right? So we can say the verse, but what is the vision? And so as I asked for vision, the Lord took me to the book of Nehemiah. And that is where it is truly a map for my journey. Nehemiah is a book that talks about Jerusalem post-exile. And we see in chapter 1 that the walls were broken down and the gates were burned with fire. And I submit to the people of the United States of America and certainly the Hoosiers of the state of Indiana, that is what has happened in our nation. We have had a breakdown of the walls. The gates have been burned with fire. We are in the midst of a moral crisis, and we need leaders that have integrity, that are going to stand for the people. And so as I studied that book, what was amazing is chapter 8, verse 9, the cupbearer, Nehemiah, that goes back to build the walls. He actually is a governor. And it says that in chapter 8, verse 9. I didn't know that when I had been taken to that book. So I call that a word from the Lord. It's a confirmation for me. After I had that, it was really a matter of faith. And I have faith. And I've walked with the Lord for 20 years. I've done some things that are really out there, and God has always been faithful. And so as I journeyed, I just began to run into so many people that also had that calling, that felt like for the last couple of years, they were being stirred for something special. And so our team is combined of many people that feel that same desire to serve the people of the state of Indiana and to bring what we call Indiana goodness. And that comes from Romans 12:21, which says, do not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good, right? The Conservative Party is like 90% of us that are in the Conservative Party that aren't in office. We probably sit around our dining room tables and talk about everything that's wrong. But the question is, are we overcoming with good? And now is the time for us to make that stand and overcome with good. So I'm excited to share with you guys what that means.
Okay, phenomenal. Looks like John's having some technical difficulties. I'm sure he'll be back very soon. So what would you say is your biggest driving force? I know obviously you're a Christian. You're very you've mentioned God. What else? Like, what do you think is your biggest driving force as far as the political climate of Indiana? What do you think is the biggest change that you would like to see driven as far as a gubernatorial position? What as governor, what big changes would you make? Kind of not necessarily day one, but fairly soon.
Well, I think what people are going to hear right away is that I'm changing the trajectory of politics in the state of Indiana. It's no longer going to be about politicians and the good old boys club. I'm here to be about the people. And that also fits with Nehemiah. The reason why he was actually hated in scripture was because he cared about the well-being of the people. And so if you were to ask me, what am I going to change? That's what's going to change. And the people of Indiana understand that, because they know they don't feel like these politicians that are in office care about them. And the ones that do are quickly targeted. And so I'm a person that comes to the table with courage. I'm not afraid of anyone. And I believe that being in the country that we're in, we owe it to our veterans. We owe it to our Constitution. We owe it to our families to be those that stand and realize that when we, the people, rise up and say enough is enough, the government has to listen to us, because it is not the government over the people. It's the people that are over the government. The power of this nation is the safest in the hands of the people. And I know that, and I appreciate that. And so I think what people will see is two things. One, they're going to see my respect for the Constitution, but the other thing they'll see is my faith. My faith is what keeps me from being concerned about myself. It's what keeps me from trying to drive a campaign that's all about my career. It's what keeps me from jumping from spot to spot. I'm different than all the other politicians because I've simply come here for the people. And we're going to bring the policies that are best for the families of the state of Indiana. We're going to bring the attention and the pressure that the governor's office can bring to ensure that our legislature are going about the policies that they're putting forward with people of Indiana as the first thing that they're thinking about. And that's really what's going to change. It's just, we're not there. Everyone knows it, and it's time for change.
Okay. All right. I like it. John, I think you had a couple of...
I don't know what went wrong there. It's sometimes that happens when you do these live shows.
It happens.
Jamie, one of the things that you're known for is your faith. And, I was, when I wake up in the night, I put Bible verses in my ears to go back to sleep. And the other day I was listening to Samuel when it talks about Saul and David. And, this scenario reminds me of, maybe the party that we're going against is the Pharisees or the Sadducees, or we have Saul. It seems like you're getting persecuted from the party you're supposed to be in. How does that, I'm conflicted with, how do we, we're supposed to embrace this party that doesn't embrace us. How do you go on with that mindset?
That's some insight right there. We are being persecuted here in the United States. The church, Big C Church, is being persecuted. And I don't know when that became popular, but it did. You really saw during COVID, probably the peeling back of the layers. You saw the curtain drawn back on the Republican Party. All of a sudden, we were asking ourselves as evangelicals or people that believe in the Lord or have faith, we were saying, hey, this is no problem because we believe in freedom. This is an easy one. Mm-hmm. And we saw that that's not what was taking place. We saw that greed, power, influence has crept into politics in our nation, and it's gone to the deepest parts of the roots of our foundation. Mm-hmm. And the only way that you can change that is you have to get people into office that truly do not have a desire to promote themselves. And that's why I run on Indiana goodness, because I am not running on my name. First of all, I was called in. And so it's not about my name. It's about the beautiful people of the state of Indiana. Oh, how beautiful they are. Our state is so special. I took 2.5 years going around this state to get to know her. Many people wanted to know, like, where are you? I haven't heard your name. Well, what kind of leader would I be if I didn't go and study the people that I'm going to lead before I come out with the policies that we believe are what they're wanting for their families? And so, yes, here in the state of Indiana, what we see is a Republican Party that has really just become an elite party. Many of them are snarky. I get offended whenever I'm on stage and people talk to the people of Indiana like they owe them something. This has to stop. These are Hoosiers. They work hard. This is a generational state. Kind of a fun fact about my family. My father-in-law, his family, the Rittenauers, are actually original settlers in the state of Indiana. And so we actually have a cemetery that's up north. And so I care about the roots that are in this state. I care about the history of our state. I care about how much we've grown. And I think what people will see when I come to the table is that I bring that great perspective that Scripture gives us. Come, let us reason together. Let's have a real conversation about what's taking place here. Let's stop with all of the niceties. What a difficult thing to do, to have a debate season when you're trying to debate policies and ideas, but you've got everybody up there that has basically been impacting everything for the last 12 years, and we're not doing great. And so really what we're doing is we're putting ourselves on a debate stage and we're asking the party to humble themselves and to admit they're wrong, and they can't do it. And so that's one of the reasons why they don't like me on stage, because I'm sitting there saying, like, now, wait a second. How is it that you have all these great policies that you want to bring forward? Where were you? Where were you these last 12 years? We've been waiting for these policies. And so I do think that the party is hearing something different. First of all, they're hearing a person that has faith. I know the word of God. I will go there all day long. That is where I get my wisdom. And so I'm not afraid of the conversation. I'm not afraid to challenge them. You know, evangelicals have been represented for some time by words. You know, people say faith, they quote a couple verses. Yeah, but what happens when the rubber meets the road? What will you do? Will you stand? Will you stand for what is right? I actually met Michelle Bachmann one time. And when I was shaking her hand, she said to me, okay, so you're going to be in office. She said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to get into office and you're just going to do the next right thing. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that simple government? Do the next right thing for the people. Make it all about the people. So I do think the Republican Party has, they've been away from the people for too long. They've been doing their Lincoln dinners, their Lincoln Day dinners for too long. They need to stop doing the routines that they're in, and they need to go and they need to meet with the people. They need to go like to Chick-fil-A or something like that. They need to open it up to the people, because they have lost the people. And when you do that, you really jeopardize the party. And so thankfully, I've voted Republican my entire life. I'm a Republican because I believe in lower taxes, less government, less regulation. I believe in life. And so I don't need the Republican Party of the state of Indiana to define me. I am a part of the Republican Party because I believe in the principles that it stands for. We've lost that in Indiana. We will change.
And I think that, you know, you left out the word freedom, and, you know, and this affects you and myself. And I think Dion's had sort of this issue of ballot access and debate access. It seems like they want to limit that freedom. You know, you had to go out and get 500 signatures in each congressional district against a machine that did not want you. And you did all that, and you did it behind the scenes. People were like, well, is she even running? But you know what? I wonder, you know, the primary is what, about
49 days?
Yeah, you know, exactly when you're running, you know exactly how. Yeah. Can you catch fire enough to get people excited about this? Because so far, you know, and I'm friends with Curtis, and so far he's the most exciting guy out of the bunch, in my opinion, until you've come along here and spruced it up a little bit with this fight to get, you know, you're the outsider. You know, Brad Chambers says he's the outsider, but you are truly the outsider on this. And so my question that I'm getting ready to ask, I'm starting to sound like Lucy Brenton on my show. She'll do a commentary, and I say, is there a question in there? The question is, what kind of experience do you have that you could lead this governor with? Now, I know, that part of that is the legislature is much stronger than the governor in this, but the governor needs a lead. I
Very
just
true.
listened to Aaron Freeman talk for 45 minutes about bold and courageous and how frustrated he was because our last governor really didn't lead. He just sort of let things happen. And he said this was his worst session in his 8 years he's been there. How can you get people fired up again? And what makes people think you can do this?
Well, again, I'm called. There's a difference. There's a difference in running for office and being called. So we know that the scriptural principle of being called really means, and whenever I explain it to people, I say it this way. All of us know as parents, whenever we have our kids in the room and the living room's messy, we say, okay, someone clean that up, and is anyone going to move? No. So what we do is we call them out by name. We say, Joshua, get up and clean the living room. And then Joshua moves because we called him by name. That's how callings work in scripture. The Lord calls us by name. He tells us exactly what he wants us to do. And my faith is strong. I understand that whenever he calls you, he equips you. My experience in business is very much along these lines. At 26 years old, I was put in charge of the second largest mortgage broker in the state of California. We had over 1,500 loan officers. And the reason I was put there was not because of my experience. It was because the owner trusted me. He saw my leadership qualities. He understood that it was easy for me to understand what to do and how to do it. But more importantly, that I did what was right. And that's not easy to do all the time. Mm-hmm. When you do what's right, it means that you have to stand and you have to take the bullet sometimes. It means that you have to make people angry sometimes. But I am a person that stands for what is right for the people that I'm representing. My job in corporate America was to protect the broker's license. I was compliance manager. I was the second one in charge of the company. And so it was my job to say to people, you know what, it's great that you're trying to make money, but I don't like the way you're trying to make it. And so I was in charge of letting them go. I was in charge of making the recommendations as to whether or not they should stay. There's some pretty serious cases that I dealt with. And my owners were always listening. I remember there was one case in particular where the lawyers, because I was the compliance officer, so I was always dealing with legal. And the lawyers just said, look, we don't know what she's doing and how she's doing it, but do whatever she says because it's working. And so I come from a background where I have been raised. My dad was from East St. Louis. He's from the inner city. My mom's from the Oklahoma rural area and the suburb area as well after she was there at the farm. And so the reality is that I was raised to understand who I am in the Lord. I was raised to be courageous. I'm not afraid of the political giant. And I can tell people that in my experience in corporate America, what I know is that people need to sit down, take a deep breath, and do what's right when they're having these tough decisions to make. And a lot of times, those decisions that are being made are not being made with the best interest of the people in mind. They're being made with the idea of who's going to make the most money, how is it going to have the most influence, how is it going to exchange power from one end of the company to another. I don't deal with it like that at all. And when you come to the table in leadership selflessly, you get more done a lot faster. And that's why we were able to get the signatures as quickly as we did without anyone knowing, because we didn't see the signature process as a burden. We saw it as an equipping tool. And that's really kind of answering your first question as well. How do we win this election? Well, we've got 49 days left. And the reality is that the time that we were getting signatures, we were doing it in a very organized fashion. I would point people to, I think Mike Braun came out with an article saying that he'd knocked on, 250,000 doors. Okay, so let's break this down for a second. So you've knocked on 250,000 doors. You've spent about $17 million, all of the candidates in the race, and you still have 43% of the people that are undecided. Mm-hmm. You have to think about that. Because what that means is that, the algorithms that they use in politics are very simple, right? Frequency and impression. We all know they're doing that. They're paying millions of dollars so that these people can come and give them, I'll give you 4 percentage points if you give me this many millions of dollars because I'll get this many frequencies and impressions. That's how they do it, right? Mm-hmm. But really think about it. They spent $17 million, knocked on 250,000 doors, only got 10,000 signatures, which by the way is 5%. Mm-hmm. And we have 43% of the people in the state of Indiana that are still undecided. It's not because they weren't informed. Hello, they've been informing everybody about them. It's because they're waiting for the candidate that is saying it's all about them. And that is who I am. And so I have a ground game that we've been working on for some time We have gatherers all over the state of Indiana. We know how to do the multiplication, and people will see it when it matters. Right now, this is kind of an extra bonus, right? Like the press I'm getting right now is icing on the cake. It's not the cake. If the press I was getting was the cake, we'd be in trouble, right? Fair statement.
Yeah. Well, there's a proverb that roll a stone up the hill, it'll roll back on you. Dig a pit for someone else, and you'll fall in it. And that's a lot of times people with intentions of keeping someone out of something.
Exactly.
Well, look at the John Rust case. He has no chance in the world of beating Jim Banks, and all they did was make him famous.
Yeah.
And very similar to what you're doing.
That's great. They really did that, didn't they?
We call that earned media. And
there you go.
I've been watching you for a while, and I think I sent your person a message to get on Mouthwash before, and I think we still have you scheduled to come back on the 2nd. So we still want you to come back again for that. But this opportunity popped up, and I know, like I said, me and Dion would be done talking about stuff by right about now, because it's like you can only talk about so much stuff, but your thing is like right now, and that's what's so cool about doing these podcasts. And that's what's good about your candidacy. You don't have to answer to anybody but the people.
That's right.
I don't have any sponsors. Dion, I'm pretty sure you don't have any sponsors. Nope. We do this for the love of our community. Yep. And I know we're getting ready to sing Kumbaya and pass out some mores here about how, we just are loving people here. But the reality is we're fighting a machine that's been working for a long time. And the thing that I've noticed, and you may have noticed this too, is there's two things they do to you. They try to discourage you, and then they try to destroy you. Then they rinse and repeat. Yep. And it has worked. And a lot of people quit. And when I was on WIBC, my closing statement was, I'm not very smart, but I don't quit. And I had several people text me and say, that was your best line. So,
right.
I love it.
You got to dig in. And the fact that you've been working on this for 6 years, this isn't just some knee-jerk reaction. This is something that you've been thinking about. And obviously others have asked you to do that, and you've been called and all that. And honestly, some people say, oh, well, God's telling me to do this. And they just sort of discount that of the religion and politics. And, Micah Beckwith is doing something new, running for lieutenant governor as a non-governor pick. It's very innovative, I'd say.
Very new.
And it's definitely got feathers all up in the air and hair on fire and things. And I could say that, your situation of getting out there and your willingness to come on shows like this. I mean, and the Mouthwash Show, it says a lot to me. And I'll tell you a story about Curtis Hill. When it's somebody who really cares about something, we have an art center here in Mars Hill, and we had it was during the Black Lives Matter. We had 12 young Black leaders come into my art center, and then Curtis came down for 2 hours when he was Attorney General. No cameras, no anything. He wanted to find out what they were about, and and that's and obviously he's been in the government and he's ruffled some feathers and whatnot, and he's be considered an outsider. And I find it very interesting that the two people that are off of these debate stages are probably the two people that should be on the very center of the debate stage. For a party that says we're a big tent, it sort of looks more like a pup tent to me. Old white dudes like me and Dion. No offense, Dion, but I don't see how we can say we're about all this diversity and we have a quality person like yourself or like Curtis that gets pushed off of there. So again, I asked that question earlier. How do you weigh running in a party that really doesn't want us? And I'm going to put me in that category too, because I'm in that same sort of category. I'm a free thinker. They don't know what I'm going to do, or I'm not their pick, or whatever that is. Sure. How do we keep going? You give me some words of encouragement.
Yeah, right. It's a good question. So when I lead, when I manage, when I come to the table, I tell everyone that comes into my door, I say, okay, you can come in, you can tell me your problem, but I want you to come in with a solution too. Even if it's not a great solution, it's fine, but we need to start somewhere. And I need to know that you're spending the energy and the time to come up with a solution. The difference between myself and I think a lot of Tea Party movements is that I think whenever people do ground games, I think they oftentimes think of the first chess move instead of like 5 down the way. So when I prepared, it was really going from the end backwards. And I think that what I've done is I've layered the people that I've talked with in such a manner that we really have everyone set up to come together at the same time. What that does is it gives an answer to how the party is treating the people. So you're asking, how do you handle the party not including? Well, the way you handle it is you remind the party it's not about them. It's not we the party, it's we the people. That's how we do this. And I come with the solution. I don't come to just lecture them and say, gosh, you guys are doing it wrong. I'm coming and saying, we're going to change this now. We're going to change this because we are the people. We believe in conservative principles. We're the ones that are voting for you, and you're not doing a good job. So we're going to change it now. What I have done is I've mobilized people, right? So we tell everyone 12-12. Whatever you're doing, tell 12 people right now, text them and say, hey, vote for Jamie Ritenour, Jamie for iangov.com. And then tell them, send this out to 12 people, say vote May 7th for Jamie Ritenour. I mean, the state of Indiana has an opportunity to do something that has not been done probably in the history of our nation. And that is to get a grassroots real impact over an entire state in one fell swoop. The reason they weren't prepared for this is because of the office I'm running for. Mm-hmm. So if I was on the ground in the local levels, they would be using all of their typical moves. But what happened was the Lord in his wisdom, he put me in a position that is really over the state. And so in their minds, and I actually have this on, I know this because of someone that told it to me, the Republican Party remarked that they didn't think I would even make the ballot. And so these were the conversations that were kind of happening behind closed doors. And so what happened was they were unprepared for someone to come and be on the ballot. And that's why they're freaking out. That's why they don't want me on the debate stage, because they're looking at 43% of the people that they've spent $17 million trying to get the attention of. And everybody's saying, no, we do not want that. And that's what's concerning them. And that's why the people of the state of Indiana should say, you know what, with 43%, it makes no sense why you would not have everybody up on that stage. Clearly, the public is saying they want all the options on the table.
So I'm glad you mentioned the debates. It's been mentioned a couple of times. Can you let people know what they can do if they want to see, for example, you and others on the debate stage? What can we do as regular civilians to affect that?
Absolutely. So the debate on March 26th is hosted by Fox 59. The debate on March 27th is hosted by Wish TV. It's very easy to just Google those two places and look for their contact information and just send them an email and say, we want all candidates on the debate stage. Super easy. You can go to our website, Jamie4iangov.com, and it'll take you to our social media. I will be doing a press release this Thursday at 2:30 at the library in Fishers, and I will give everyone some more contact information. But this is definitely a time for the people to be heard. In fact, in the next our debate, which is the one on March 26th, they actually had in their criteria that if there was a public outcry, they had the right to reassess the criteria, so they could change the criteria. So when the lieutenant governor comes out and says everyone should be on the debate stage, I'm pretty sure that that's a public outcry there. So we're in a good position to get on the debate stage, and I definitely think people should let their voices be heard.
Yeah, well, let's get out the boxes of Kleenex for that outcry, because there's going to be some outcry. I would say to these other candidates that are on that debate stage, why don't they man up or woman up and say, hey, I'm not coming on your debate. Let's all of us come on here. This is the part of the lack of competition makes us stronger. I never wanted, when I ran track with two guys from East St. Louis, Jerry Jones and Sammy Ware. I know you probably don't know them, but they were super fat. Both those guys were really fast. And back in the day, when I went to school, East St. Louis was really rough. So I know that you said your dad was from East St. Louis. Is that correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he's probably close to my age, maybe a little older. East St. Louis was one of those you'd see on the news of places you don't go.
Yeah.
And they were probably fast because they had to outrun the bullets. That's what we always would say, because both of those guys were number 4 on a relay team, and they're both of them very quiet. I mean, I don't know what that if there's a correlation there between East St. Louis and being quiet and being fast, but they had both of those attributes. So the competition thing, what is this just about control? Is this just about the party wanting to control the narrative or the issue? What do these two stations tell you? That one, that they had a poll and a fundraising limit. Is that their excuse?
That is the excuse. Yeah, they had a poll and they wanted it to be 5% or above. It had a 4% margin, but then when you read the tiny print, it said the margin didn't have to be taken into account. That's weird.
Of course not. Yeah. It's
and then and so the other thing is, they had an amount of money that they wanted everyone to get. One was for one debate, it was 300,000. For the other, it was 100,000. Look, we're showcasing conservatism. It would be so easy for me to, shout out, let's get a GoFundMe and let's all jump in and give money and get me on the debate stage. But I haven't done that because that is an indication of how I would govern. People need to understand, right? Open up your eyes. The first time that it happens, it's shame on them because they're doing something wrong. But if it happens twice, it's shame on us. And so we have to look at what is actually taking place. The Bible talks about godly sorrow. Godly sorrow is eager to make things right. How many of the candidates that are running for governor right now have been eager to make things right? Do we actually think they're going to get into office and be eager to make things right? They're showing you right now. I'm so disappointed in Eric Doden. What the heck is going on? Are you freaking kidding me? Are you on commercials touting your faith? And as a brother in the Lord, it has taken you this long to say something? That is
it's in my experience with this, nothing happens till there's public outcry. Literally. I mean, unless
that is not how it should be. If you
it should not be.
We both know this, right? Because we know scripture. In the scriptures, it is so specific. When you call yourself a Christian, you judge by the fruit of the tree. And the fruit of the tree is not our own filter, right? So we don't want to be those that are immature, right? Let's grow and let's be mature. What fruit are we talking about? We're talking about love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Let's look for some goodness here. I'm looking for goodness, and righteousness is when you stand up and you say, hey, I've got a fellow sister over here. You didn't put her on the debate stage. That's not right. That is not hard to do. I am putting out a very specific comment to Eric Doden. As a brother in the Lord, you should have been on this. So let's get me on the debate stage because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, right. I think so too. And that's one of our challenges that we're going to put out to the folks that are watching this show and our Mouthwash show that's coming up next is that. And, we'll have Democrat, Libertarian, and trust me, Jamie, they'll be the Democrat and the Libertarian are going to have fun with this. I mean, especially Lucy Brenton. Now, she's Libertarian. She ran against Todd Young and the big boys, and she makes fun of Todd Young's height. so she will have no trouble throwing some people under the bus. Just watch out for the axles. That's all I'm saying about that.
Right.
Yeah, I met Lucy before. So I'm obviously convinced you're a Christian, which is definitely a positive thing, but I don't know much about your governance, like what you would do and the policies you would enact. One of the things that people need to be aware of, especially here in the state of Indiana, you mentioned it briefly, John, is the governor actually has very little power compared to other states. The legislature has all the power. So one of the things that I'd like to directly ask you, are you concerned? Assume you win, you get in, yay, phenomenal. Are you worried that the legislature will see you as an outsider and hence not be as willing to work as they have been? I'm going to give just a really quick story. So when I ran for U.S. Congress and then state rep, one of the events that happened was COVID, the lockdown, the mask mandate from the Holcomb administration, et cetera. I'm not going to get too deep into that. But one of the things that was very clear was when the Indiana legislature passes something, the governor can veto it. That means very little in Indiana because most states require a large, 3/4, 2/3. Indiana only requires a simple majority to override a governor veto, which is unusual. Mm-hmm. That said, when I asked them, I'm like, hey, why don't we get out there and veto this? I forget the exact legislation that was going on, but I said, you passed it, you can veto it. The response from everyone that I spoke to was, well, we don't want to anger the governor. We don't want to go against him. I said, that's your job. That's literally your job description, is to set the law for the state of Indiana. And in this case, the law isn't lawful. So I think it was regarding the speaker and the way to, anyway, are you concerned because they were worried about going against Holcomb? I don't believe they would be as worried about going against someone else that is outside the establishment. Does that make sense? And does that concern you?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. And I think the public needs to know that, as you said, Indiana is not a state that gives the governor the line item veto power. And as you say, we don't have the veto power when it comes to legislation. So what I have done is, again, used wisdom. What is important is truth, transparency, and engagement. That's what we really talk about. We talk about the importance of putting the truth out there, the importance of having transparency, and the importance of the people being engaged. Part of the reason why we did our signatures the way that we did, part of the reason why we've created the kind of ground game that we have, is because we are preparing the people, not just for governing on this side, but governing on the other side. So this is going to be an administration that is every Tuesday in front of the press, giving local press the opportunity to ask questions, national press in the back. We are bringing transparency to the table. We will be the administration that is telling the public about every bill, those that make it into committee and those that don't. We are the administration that will be saying who's voting for bills and who is not voting for bills. We're going to report, as is my duty per the Constitution, to the people of the state of Indiana what the General Assembly is doing. And because I've taken the time to be on the ground, because I've loved the people, when they are not listening to what we are saying, the people will know. They'll know exactly who's not listening. And those people are going to be people that should be very concerned about whether or not they'll be in office the next term.
Yeah. So, well, with that being said, you talk about, going forward after winning. Are you prepared to fill the spots, because there's a lot of government people that work, that need a job for the next guy. And I have a friend that worked for the attorney general previously. And then we had a new attorney general and he said, I don't know if I have a job. Well, we saw Todd at the circle. I said, well, let's just go ask him. So we went up and asked him. He said,
wow,
give me a call Monday and we'll get you a job. And so the things of, and I would think that, if I was king for a day, I would say, I would look at the roster and say, hey, you're good. You're maybe not so good. Is that how you're going to look at things? Or is it going to be a total clean house? Or what would be your approach, say, day one of, I got these people that are doing these jobs. How can I do it better? Is that with that person or with that person?
It's a really good question. Let's go into a biblical perspective. So let's look at when the Israelites went into the promised land. We know that there the Lord said, I'm not going to give you the whole land, because if I did, it would basically, the animals would overrun them. The land would grow too fast. And so we plan on doing things in phases. And so when I go in, immediately we're going to focus on education. We've been working very hard. We went all over the state. We met in many different counties when nobody knew we were there. And we developed an education, a policy perspective, and a group of procedures that we're going to go through to make sure that the children of the state of Indiana are taken care of. And so when we look at our education policies, K through 5, we're saying we're taking out critical race theory, SEL, and we are just focusing on the academic core. And then in 6th grade, we are saying all of the private sector has the opportunity to, you adopt a highway, now adopt a classroom. We want to see the private sector in the classroom having conversations with our 6th graders about how technology innovation, AI is affecting their businesses. We want the 6th grade class to become aware that the workforce is going to change in about 10 years very drastically. So they need to be thinking about that. Even if the conversation is over their head, we want them to get used to the conversation. 7th and 8th grade, we're bringing trade back. So that's all of your trade classes, workshops, sewing, cooking. And then we ask everyone their freshman year 3 questions: college, career, or calling. We want to give vision to students when they walk in the door. And we'd like to end their high school career by giving each student an apprenticeship requirement, so that every student that graduates in the state of Indiana graduates having completed an apprenticeship. That will directly affect our small businesses. They'll be able to submit their apprenticeships. And then that will be one way that they can have people work for them without having to pay them, because they'll be working their senior year. We are paying for the senior year anyway. Our taxpayer dollars are paying for that. And so this is a great opportunity for us to actually do something in the senior year. There are many places in the state of Indiana, many counties that are already about getting seniors into internships, Ivy Tech and those kinds of things. We're just going to make this a statewide solution. And so we have a game plan. And what you're going to see day one is you're going to see me come out and speak about life. You're going to see me come out and speak about education. And then you're going to see a full force education staff headed out by my head of education, Paige Miller, 30 years experience in the classroom, master's in administration. She's a mom for liberty. She's going to go out. She's going to be on the ground. She's going to be all over the state of Indiana so that the news really has the opportunity to see goodness. We want to control the messaging. We want to make sure that we are out in front of the messaging that's taking place. While we're doing that, we're going to be doing some audits on some very important parts of the state. The primary focus will be the IEDC because, again, as I've traveled the state and I've been in District 4 and 8 and 9 and 1, I'm seeing a lot of activity from the IEDC. And I will just say that in my studying, I'm having a hard time seeing how that's constitutional. So we're going to study what they're doing. And then if it looks as corrupt as it does on the outside looking in, so again, I'm going to give them the opportunity to prove it's not. But if it looks as corrupt as it actually is, we are going to go in and we're just going to get rid of the IEDC because I can't have my name on something that's corrupt. It's not good for the people. It's not good for myself. It won't give glory to the Lord. So we've got a few things that we're going to have to take care of right away because it's like a cancer in the state. A little leaven leavens the whole lump. And so we need to slow it down. We need to take a deep breath. So we're going to deal with education and the IEDC right away. While we're doing that, we're going to start our focus also on the Department of Transportation. So the Department of Transportation is looking into Link 101. Holcomb promised $200 million to Link 101. That's down in District 9. They're going to save 6 to 8 minutes and spend $200 million on that highway. The residents there have cried out. They've gotten signatures. They are asking for someone to give attention. This is cross political. So these are multiple people from different parts of the parties. Mm-hmm. And they have just said, we do not want this here. And they are not being listened to. And so when you take in the fact that there's inflation, Department of Transportation said 69% increase in costs because of inflation, you're looking at over $300 million to save 6 to 8 minutes. So we're going to stop that with the Department of Transportation. We're going to shift the focus. The federal government actually came up some years ago and said we should really not be focusing on expanding our footprint. We should be focusing on rebuilding what we already have and shoring up what's already here. And so we're going to look at the Department of Transportation, specifically the rails. We'd like to connect our small towns and develop what's really kind of, if you see the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, we'd like to have the Indiana Goodness Train. And we'd like to connect our small towns and really revive the small towns of Indiana, not by using government money. Ring, ring. Who is it? It's conservative. We would like to use the private sector. And I've already been talking to investors that are very interested in helping these small towns come about. We're looking at some real creativity. Could we theme these small towns? I've actually been in these small towns. So everybody needs to understand that I'm not just talking. I have small towns in mind. I know who has already been given some of the buildings on Main Street. I know where to go. I've had conversations with them. And when you're working in the way that I am, when I say small, I mean real small. Because if you are under about 500 people, 1,000 to 500 people, you're not going to get stuck with the government issues that you would have if you were higher than that. So we do have initiatives that we're going to be moving forward in immediately. That is what you call controlling the messaging. While we're doing that, we'll be auditing the other areas of the state. When we work with Florida, Texas, Arkansas in mind. We are not those states. We certainly are not California, thank goodness. But what we have to do is we have to look at the beauty of Indiana. We have to look at what makes her special. She's not a one size fits all. And so we are looking at every corner of the state of Indiana. And when I look at government, and I look at small government, I look at Texas, I look at Florida, I look at Arkansas. We have 30 departments in our state. It's a huge, massive government. It's got to change. We also have our eyes on Gary, Indiana. I'm happy to say that I'm looking at the airport there, and I've been studying it. And I have a few people that are meeting with me to discuss what our plans are for the airport. We're not going to roll those out quite yet, but we will. But that is what we think is going to be a huge key in turning the city of Gary around. So we do have plans when it comes to prison reform. It's really prison transform. That's huge. I mean, we've got to get in there. We've got to see what's going on. We've got ideas in that regard as well. And so we are prepared. I have 3 ways that I run this campaign. I've got my ground game, I've got my policy teams, and I have my campaign tours, and we all work at the same time. We've been doing this for 2.5 years. We're going to give the state of Indiana goodness, and it's going to be something that benefits everyone in the state. I think they're going to enjoy it.
Great.
Well,
I
I'm just
want to jump in
disappointed.
here
Yeah,
real
hold
quick.
on. What's that? I'm just disappointed you don't have any details.
So
I got. Go ahead, Dion. It's your show.
specifically, I was a correctional officer at Indiana State Prison,
Mhm.
right here in Michigan City, which
Ooh, that's
John
the
may or
bad.
may not know.
That's the
We're
bad.
right up the road from Gary.
Yeah.
Gary, Indiana, we can be there in 15, 20 minutes. It's right there. So, but I'm glad you mentioned Gary because I think it's been, I think it's been neglected. Not just Gary, but the entire northern Indiana has been neglected by multiple previous administrations. All of these wonderful businesses that Holcomb welcomed in from China and other overseas locations, some of them are really good for the local area. Every single one of them go around Indy or south. Very, very few, or occasionally you'll get like a Logansport or a Fort Wayne. Nothing in Northwest Indiana. Now, a big reason for that is because generally Northwest Indiana is Democrat run. The cities have Democrat mayors. The representatives are Democrats. So the politicization of Indiana means they don't want to give Democrats a win by getting economic things up here.
Yeah.
And I understand how that works and I get it. But the other side of the coin is we have lots of really strong, like for example, LaPorte County, Michigan City, as the largest city in LaPorte County, is Democrat run, but the county itself is extremely Republican, extremely conservative, very, very, farmers and construction workers and all, normal everyday Americans.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at ISP. They're closing down Indiana State Prison at some point in the very near future, and they're building in Westville, which is also LaPorte County, right up the road. They're going to move all of these inmates from Indiana State Prison to Westville. Now, as the governor, you're in charge. Assuming you win, obviously, you're in charge. Do you have a pick to run DOC?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because it takes a lot of vetting to get that position because it's so highly political. It's not just a matter of vetting the person. The person also has to come forward with a whole lot of courage. The way that I am building my staff is I'm building it this way. I'm looking for retired people to come in and serve for a year because I know it's going to be one heck of a year. I know it's going to burn them out.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's going to be hard, but I just need a year. While they're working for a year, I'll have the rest of the staff that's going to come behind them. Remember whenever President Trump was in office, how we were constantly seeing the turnover.
The interims.
What we're going to do is get out in front of the messaging. We're just going to call a spade a spade. This is going to be tough. It's not going to be easy. You're going to see after a year, an entire group of leaders moving on because the stress that they're going to be under for that year is going to be very intense. But we have another staff behind them. And the purpose for that is so that whenever they get out their arrows and they start shooting, the second staff is going to point to the first staff and say, well, you can't shoot me. I'm the messenger. They're the ones that did the work. And those people are going to have moved on and be about their retirement while we are taking what they've done and building up what is good for the state of Indiana. And so I do have my feelers out. I am looking for retired people that are ready to go, and I am looking for the team of leaders that will come in after them. There are people that have come forward, and we are taking notes. We have a policy team that's constantly going over our initiatives, and the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron, and what that means is really it's not necessarily sparks as much as the Hebrews talking about to lift up the countenance of, right? And so these are good conversations that we have, and we welcome leaders. Leadership is not easy. It is a calling. And so those that are available need to come forward, and they need to take their place with our team and build their part of the wall. I will say this, when it comes to Gary, Indiana, just like when it comes to the farmers, I'm in every part of the state. So I want our farmers to diversify. I'm there. I've gone and looked at regeneration farming, which is just incredible opportunity for our farmers. I have a meeting with farmers later on today, or not today, but next week. We will be in Gary, Indiana. We will address prison transforming, the transformation that needs to take place, how we can bring education and provide people with vision. When we look at the airport, it's a great opportunity for us to bring a training program. Our apprenticeships are something that people should be looking forward to. It's a worldwide issue right now. We are low in pilots. And so I'd love to see the people of the state of Indiana, specifically in Gary, contribute their students to a pilot program. I want to say something. Jennifer McCormick was in charge of she was head of education. She failed. She did a horrible job. And in doing so, she's hurt the people of the state of Indiana and their children, because when you don't have education, you don't have knowledge. Without knowledge, you don't have power. And so what we are going to do is we are going to look at education with all options on the table. If I go into Gary, Indiana, and I say, hey, when you're a senior, you're going to get this opportunity to have an apprenticeship. And that student says to me, a senior, like, I don't even know if I'm going to make it to my sophomore year. Okay, well, guess what just happened? In Gary, Indiana, my head of education, we are working on programs that will actually give them opportunities to have apprenticeships at a much younger age, like freshman year. We are going to bring students hope. The people that have worked in education get an F. When you get an F, all options go on the table.
Right. So that being said, the big picture, I've been a substitute teacher. I wanted to find out what all this stuff was coming out of COVID, or what was all this rigmarole about my kids getting taught this and that. And I did have to teach SEL to fourth graders who had no idea of what SEL was. It just was amazing. And it was funny because it was in my elementary school that I went to in 1972. I had the same class there, and I'm teaching them SEL, and I'm thinking, man, they used to come up and smack us and hit us. So my point being, the two things that I noticed that we do not have in our education system is respect and discipline. Where are you on that thing? I mean, hey, the Bible says spare the rod, and all that good stuff. Where are you? I mean, and I've been to all sorts of different schools. I mean, I do mostly 2 townships. And there's not much consistency at all in these schools. Some are great and some not so good. And, IPS I won't go to. I'm just saying.
Yeah, this is all lack of vision. It's lack of leadership. It's a failure on the part of the state to lead. Kids are impressionable. Okay, so that's where we start. We start with the fact that kids want to belong. We are in a society in our nation right now that is broken. The family is broken. And when the family is broken, it impacts the children. And broken children look for a place to land. And oftentimes they land in clubs or groups of people that are just wanting them to all identify as a unit. And then it doesn't really matter what the unit chooses, because the kids are focusing on the fact that they feel included. I've been a junior high counselor, a high school counselor. And what I mean by that is not by degree, but it means that I spent my time where I could have been with my friends and my family. And instead I was serving in church and I was discipling kids. And what I know is that when you look a child in the eyes and you tell them that they're special, when you tell them there's a plan for their life, children respond. And so what we are going to do is we're going to be on the ground. In my home, we run our house with 2 words. We say you need to be kind and respectful. That, we believe, just really covers everything. And so what we will do is we will bring that same philosophy to the table for all of the schools of the state of Indiana. Be kind and respectful. And then we will give vision. What do you want to be? Kindergarten, we're already going to ask them. In the scriptures, it says, train up a child in the way they shall go. And
they'll go that way.
And so a lot of times what people think is that means train up a child in the word and they will not depart from it. And I think there's a good reason to translate the scripture passage that way. But I also heard a sermon one time that said that you could translate the Hebrew, train up a child in the way they were meant to be, and they will not depart from it. And so when my children were very young, I had 4 children under 4. My sister used to say that's a license plate, right? I had 4 under 4.
Were they twins? Wait, hold on a second. What? Yeah. How did that? You had 2 sets of twins, or what?
No, they're just very, very close in age. So I have my 4-year-old, and then it goes 18 months apart, and then 16 months apart, and then 15 months apart. So right now they have certain times of the year where there's right there in that 4-year period of time. And it's pretty crazy, honestly. But they are so close together. They rival one another because they're all very opinionated, which is a good thing. My husband and I talk about that often.
Where did they get that from?
I know. Where do they get those opinions from? But
I can one up you. I have 4 millennials that wow. I got 26 to 31. So
that's opinion coming right there.
We sort of did that, changing diapers for 9 years type of thing. And,
my goodness.
And I have 2 younger sisters.
I gotta jump in here real quick.
Oh, yeah.
We got like a minute left. Because then we're going to, guys, everybody watching, we're going to take this and jump into Mouthwash Show. But one thing that I want to say real quick before we have to end this, a lot of people may or may not be aware that in the state of Indiana, our correctional system it uses contractors. It's privatized. We have contracted for food service and contracted for medical service. The only reason that it doesn't go further at Indiana State Prison is because we have death row, referred to as X row. That's the only reason that it actually didn't get, the officers didn't get privatized as well, the way that many locations across the state of Indiana are. They're not actually correctional officers. They're a company called GEO, and they're basically security guards that are trained as correctional officers. And regardless of the logistics involved or getting it done, your personal opinion, are you in favor of more or less privatizations of our correctional facilities?
They have to be audited. I think that private contractors can be a good thing when you talk about DCS and just the kind of job that we're doing there. We're failing as a state to take care of the children. So I think that there's some good evidence of orphanages that can come in and provide help for DCS. And so I like privatization and contractors working in a department like that. The prisons, that's another conversation. I'd have to vet that. I'd have to look at the contractors that we have. I'd have to see. I heard that parole was also something, the parole officers were also contracted out. I'm not sure if that's true or not. So I have to look at that. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to have I've heard of an integrity unit in Marion County. I'm looking at the possibility of having an integrity unit that the state, and again, I'm not for big government, and so it's hard for me to say that, but I do think that we need some transparency and accountability in this area. And so I would have to look at these private contractors, the work they're doing, to give you a good answer on that. And I can't do that, and I won't be able to do that until I get to the other side, because they're not going to release that information.
Okay.
Some of this stuff is, you gotta get the job first. That's what I always, it's one of those things where, what Nancy Pelosi say, well, we got to pass the bill so you can see what's in it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing like that. But you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Sometimes you can't get the cart in front of the horse. Yeah. So,
okay. So we're going to move over to Mouthwash. We'll be starting that. We got like 3 minutes. So everybody,
that's how our usual show is. Everybody pops on at the last minute and we go. So we'll just do it all again.
Absolutely. So I would like to thank you both very, very much for coming on to Dion's Daily Dose. And I will see you in just a few minutes.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay, guys. I will meet you on Mouthwash. Look them up. They're on pretty much all the places that I am. I don't have a direct link, but I'm pretty sure you can find it in the search bar. It works pretty well, at least most of the time. Unless you're looking for something that the mainstream media doesn't want you to find. And I don't think that's the case here. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. I will see you in just a few minutes. And remember, God bless you, God bless Indiana, and God bless the United States of America. Thanks.
If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose. This has been Dion's Daily Dose, hosted by Dion Bergeron. Executive producers, Sean Holgram and Michael Beebe. Copyright 2024. Dion's Daily Dose, all rights reserved.